Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Yud Tes Amud Aleph, 19a of Maseches Taanis, and we are 2 lines from the bottom of the page. At the 2 dots, the Gemara says, it quotes the Mishnah, and the Mishnah said, "V'chein shepasku geshamim min geshem el geshem chulei." The Mishnah had said that if the rain stopped between one rain and the next for 40 days, that was also cause for alarm, and in addition, the Mishnah basically said that we had this whole series, 3 fast and 7. That was if it hadn't rained at the beginning of the season, but if it rained but then it stopped for 40 days, that was ominous, and in such a situation, you would go right to the most stringent of fasts and fast and blow shofar and all of the things that come along with that. Now, the Mishnah had said that the reason why is because mipnei shehi makas batzoros. It is a plague of drought, which is an interesting expression. And the Gemara asks, "Mai makas batzoros?" What does that mean, a plague of drought? So Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Makkah hamavio lidei batzoros. The idea is it's a makkah, it's a plague, it's a situation that will lead to a setting of drought. Drought, basically means no rain, but the idea is it's a scenario where you have the effects of drought, and if it doesn't rain for 40 years, so that's something that leads to the situation, the scenario of the crops being in a way that we would refer to that as batzoros, which will translate as drought, as opposed to something more severe, which is famine, which is what it's about to compare it to. So at that point, we call it batzoros. The food is lacking. It's similar to a drought. So now we're going to compare this situation to something more severe, which is a famine. So Amar of Nachman, Nahara anahara betsorta. If it's literally from river to river, meaning in this particular city, there's no grain, but you could bring it by river from another city. So then, that we would refer to as a situation as batsorta. The food is lacking, it's like a drought. But medinsa kafna. But if you can only get food from another province, another country, so then that's more severe, that's kafna, that's famine, that's ra'av, Rashi says. And it's something that we have to look at as something more severe. Ve'amar Rav Chanina, and Rav Chanina made another comparison of what we would call batzaros and what we would call kafna, what we would call just like drought, and what we would call something more severe like famine. He said, sa'a b'sala ushchicha batzorta. If food is very expensive, so for example, you can get a sa'a, which is a measurement of grain, for a sela, which is an amount of money. So that's apparently, to get a sa'a for a sela is expensive. So then, but the grain is available, it's just expensive. That, he says, is batsorta. That's drought. That's a difficult situation, but it's not quite famine. But you can have the opposite situation where you can get arba'a for a sala. You can get 4 sa for a sala, which means it's not as expensive. However, v'lo shchicha, but it's actually not available. So then kafna. That's called a famine. So it's describing an interesting situation. Usually we think of supply and demand, but I guess there are other factors that can define a price, and you can have a situation where technically maybe it's a regulated price, but you can have that the price of grain is not so high. It's 4 sa for a sala, not as high as in a different situation, but yet it's not available even. So then that's a kafna, that's a famine, that's very severe. Amar Rav Yochanan, says Rav Yochanan, Lo shano el bizman shehamaos bizol uperos biyoker. This is true when maos, money is cheap, and fruit are biyoker, are expensive. Not so clear from the Gemara what he means by lo shano. It was only taught, but he seems to be saying it's not so terrible when money is cheap and fruit are expensive, like similar to what we just said, that we call batsorta. We call that drought. The food's available, it's just expensive. But most biyoker peiros bezol. But if the money is expensive, meaning it's valued. People don't have cash, but the fruit are cheap. But that doesn't help you. Masrin aleh miyad. Says Rabbi Yochanan, we would blow shofar for that, meaning we would go right to the severe fast right away. Even if the technical price of fruit is cheap, but if it's not available, then that doesn't help you, and we would have to fast and blow shofar right away. Rabbi Yochanan said, Nahirna, I remember, Kadhavu kaimi dalet sayin besela. I remember a time when this was the case, that you could get 4 sa for a sela, so that's not a bad price. However, it wasn't available. V'havu nefishi nefichi kapan b'taveria midules isar. But there were bloated. People were bloated from famine in a bad way. They were starving because they didn't have any money. So actually, it seems that Rabbi Yochanan is sort of redefining what we said. We said that if there's 4 sa for a sela, but it's not shchiach, it's not available, then that's considered famine. Now, I already raised the question, so what does that mean, though? Because usually supply and demand, what does it mean it's not available? So actually, Rabbi Yochanan went and explained that what we mean is, by not available, is nobody has any money to buy it. If nobody has any money to buy it, so that we immediately blow shofar. If the peiros are available, the fruit's available, it's cheap, but nobody has any money, so then that we have to fast for immediately. Okay, the Mishnah had another clause, Yardu l'tzmachin avalo li'ilan. The Mishnah talked about different types of rain. It said if it rains for the small sproutings, but not for the trees, or for the trees, but not for the sproutings, or for both, but not enough to fill up the cisterns to have a water supply. So in all the situations, the Mishnah said that we fast the most severe fast right away. So what is this? What does that mean? How do you have such a case? So it says Bishlama litzmachin v'lo li'ilan mishkachasla. I understand that you can have a case where it rains for tzmachim, for the sproutings, but not for trees. That we can find. Da'asanicha v'las yirazya. It rains lightly, but it doesn't rain hard. In order to supply enough water for the trees, it needs to rain hard. Light rain isn't going to do it, but for the little plants, it's the opposite. Hard rain isn't good for it; they need light rain. So if you have light rain, but you don't have hard rain, so that's good for the plants, but not for the trees. Or it can rain for the trees, but not for the plants. The opposite, where you have hard rain, but you don't have soft rain. And you can have it that it rains for those two, but not for the pits, cisterns, and caves where you keep water. You can have that it rains soft or it rains hard, but it doesn't rain so much. So you have enough rain for the plants, but not enough to fill your cisterns. So I understand all that, and that's what our Mishnah really talked about. Those 3 cases where it rains for the plants, but not for the trees but not for the plants, for both the trees and the plants, but not for the cisterns. I understand how you can have all those. Ella hadatanya, but that which it's talking a brisa, a different case. It says yardu lebaros osichum l'maaros avalo lezel lezeh. It said, or if it rained to fill the cisterns, but not for the plants and the trees, so also you would fast right to the most severe fast. What does that mean? Asked the Gemara. How is the case where it will fill the cisterns, but it won't help for the trees or the plants? So the Gemara answers, Ta'asya b'shvichusa. It's where it comes in a downpour. It pours out, like a torrential downpour, I suppose. It will just wash away. It won't help for the plants and the trees. However, it will help to fill the cisterns, but that still we would fast for because we don't have water for our plants. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. We're 4 lines down in the wide lines here. Masrian al ha'ilanos beprus ha'pesach. So it says we blow shofar, we fast, a severe fast, and blow shofar for the trees beprus ha'pesach, which is a funny word, but it means basically during the holiday of Pesach. So if if the winter's gone on and I guess it hasn't really rained, and you haven't gotten rain for the trees, and it's Pesach time, the end of the winter, and it still hasn't rained, you would still fast now in hopes that it would rain. And and to fill your water cisterns, caves, pits, even b'prusa chag, even during the chag. Now, what's the chag? So Rashi here learns that it refers to, I believe Rashi says, actually not clear in Rashi, but some understand that it refers to Sukkos, others understand it refers to Shavuos. That if you don't have your cisterns full at that time, you would daven to fill the cisterns if it's Shavuos for the coming summer. If it's Sukkos, so you wouldn't. The understanding there is you wouldn't have davened during the summer because it doesn't rain in Israel during the summer. It's like davening for a miracle. But now it's Sukkos time and the winter's about to come, and you really need water. You need rain. So then you would daven then for water to fill the cisterns. V'al kulan imein lahem mayim lishtos masrin lehem miyad. And for anywhere, any time, if you don't have water to drink, forget about filling your cisterns, but if you don't have water to drink today, so then we would fast and blow shofar right away. Ve'zehu miyad shalan, and what do we mean right away? Sheni v'chamishi v'sheni. We mean the first Monday, Thursday, and Monday that you encounter. So if you run out of water or you realize that you don't have water, so then you don't fast that very day, because the fasts are specific to Monday, Thursday, and Monday. That's when you would fast for that. And all of these things, we only daven for them in their specific, or we only fast for them in their specific place where it's needed. This is not a global issue. This is specific to the place where they don't have water, or they don't have their cisterns full, or whatever it is, and it would be specifically in that place that they would fast. The askara. What about askara? Askara is, as Rashi describes, some kind of sickness of the throat. It actually appears pretty frequently in the Gemara. The Sefaria translations translate as diphtheria, which is an infection of the throat. So askara, bisman she'ish b'misa, if it's occurring and it's killing people, masrin aleha, then we would fast and blow shofar for that. Bisman she'ein b'misa, if it's not killing people, ein masrin aleha, we would not fast and blow shofar for it. That's with regards to askara. Umasrin ala govai b'kol. Now we blow shofar and fast even for the most little bit of govai. Govai is a kind of locusts. And if they come, then immediately we have to go right into fasting mode, even for a little bit. Rav Shimon ben Elazar Omer, af ala chagav. Rav Shimon ben Elazar is like even for chagav, which is another type of locust, I guess a little less dangerous. The first opinion how goes specifically govai, but not chagav, only this type of locust, but not the chagav locust. But Rav Shimon ben Elazar is saying, no, even for chagav, chagav is also considered a threat, and you would fast if you see some of that in your midst. Tanu Rabbana, the rabbis taught, Masrin ala ha'ilanus b'shar shanei shavua. You would blow shofar and fast for trees that are not getting rain for the other years, but not for the Shemitah year. But if you're lacking water in your cisterns, that you would fast for even in a Shemitah year. The idea here is a Shemitah, during the year of Shemitah, the sabbatical year, every 7th year in Israel, so the land lies fallow, and you're not working the land. And just like you're not working the land, this opinion is saying you don't have to daven for rain for the land to grow. You're not worrying about the land this year. But if you don't have water in your cisterns, that you would worry about, and that you would daven for. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says you even fast if you don't have rain for the trees. Why? Bishvius during the Shemitah year. Because it's true that you don't work them and you don't survive off of them, You don't harvest them, although you could collect just for, regular eating. You can't harvest it, but more specifically, he says, it's providing parnas, it's providing livelihood for the poor people. The poor people come and it's hefker, it's ownerless, and therefore it's important that the trees grow, so even though you're not working them, but you should still daven that they should have, and fast if they don't have rain, because it's necessary to supply for the poor people. Tanya, we have another brisa that's similar. It says, Mastring ala ilanos b'shar shanei shavua. Again, it says that we blow shofar and fast for the trees, for the rain for the trees, other years, but not during Shemitah. And but for water to fill our cisterns, that we would fast even in a Shemitah year. So far that's the same as the previous brisa. However, in the second part is going to be a little bit different. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, Af ala ilanos masriyin. We even blow shofar and fast for the trees. And he adds in, and ala svichen. And Rashi's gear says, Ve'af ala svichen, and even for the safichin. Safichin are wild growth that grow during Shemitah. B'shvius, we would also daven for that and fast for that. Again, for the same reason, because it provides livelihood for the poor people. What was added in this version of the brisa is that he added in the word safichin. He says we daven and fast that the trees should get rain, and even that the wild growth should get rain, because that also, they both can supply food for the poor people. Tanya, we have a brisa. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Prata. Rabbi Elazar ben Prata said, Miyom shechar beis hamikdash nasu geshamim tzimukim le'olam. From the day that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the rain became, tzimukim, it literally means like shriveled. It was after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, we didn't get the same amount of rain, seemingly, he says, in the world, actually. I was going to say in the land of Israel, but he says, La'olam, the whole world wasn't the same after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Yeshana shegishameha merubin. Some years have a lot of rain. V'yeshana shegishameha moating, and some have only a little bit of rain. It could be that's what he means by tzimukim, like shriveled, like there's like bumps, up and down. Perhaps Rashi says something else. Rashi says that it's yardim bekoshi. It doesn't come easily. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. Some years you have a lot of rain, some years you only have a little. Yeshana kshamel yardim bizmanon. Sometimes it rains in the proper time. Yeshana she'en kshamel yardim bizmanon. And sometimes it doesn't rain in the proper time. Now the Gemara is going to give different analogies to understand the value of rain in abundant rain in its proper time. Shana shegishamel yardim bizmanon lemahu dome. If it rains in its proper time on schedule, what do we compare that to? To a servant who received his pay on Sunday. So he has a lot of time to prepare for Shabbos because he got paid on Sunday. Nimtseis isa nefes ketikna, so his dough is baked properly, v'necheles ketikna, and it can be consumed properly because he's had time to prepare it properly. The same is true if it rains early, so then you're on schedule, everything's working out fine. But but if it doesn't rain on time and the crops are only growing late and things are rushed and not on schedule, what is that comparable to? That's like a servant who gets paid on Friday. So does he have time to prepare for Shabbos? Not much. His dough is baked improperly, it's rushed, and it's not eaten properly, I guess because it's not baked properly. And that's like if it rains late, everything is sort of off schedule, and things don't work out as well. A year in which there's a lot of rain, what can we compare that to? It's like a servant who got paid everything, all his grain, all at once. Nimtses rechayim tochnos minakur mashe tochnos minakav. It comes out that the mill will grind from a kur, which is a measurement, as much as it will grind from a kav. which is another measurement. So the idea is that when you process your grain through the mill, so inevitably some of it's going to get lost. It's going to get stuck in the cracks or blow away or whatever it is. And the idea is that it doesn't really matter how much you do at a time. The mill is always going to trap the same amount. So it's better to do more at a time than less, because a higher percentage is going to make it out of the mill, the more that you do. So the idea is that when you have all your grain from the beginning and you can grind it all at once, so then you'll walk away with a higher percentage because less will get stuck in the mill. So that's what it's saying, that the mill which grinds, the mill will grind a core the same amount that it would grind with a kav. I think a core is larger than a kav, and it's saying that it will pull away from the core as much as it would anyways from the kav, the smaller measurement. You're better off. V'nimte, saying it's similar, you find isa ochelas min hakor kmo ochelas min hakav. That dough, the same thing is true when you bake. When you bake, so your mixing bowl is going to get some stuck to the side, and it's always going to be the same amount, or in the cracks if it has. So it's always going to be the same amount. So the more that you can grind, or the more dough that you can make at a time, the less is going to be lost, the lower percentage. So that's the idea, the mushal, that's the analogy for the season as well. That if it rains a lot, so then you have more. In general, you're more productive. Your percentages are higher because you have more grain. That's if gishamel merubin. But shana shekishamel muatim. But a year in which it doesn't have a lot of rain. I think the idea here is that it's similar with the rain. The rain also, you get a higher. The more rain, the higher percentage of value for each rainfall. Seems like the Gemara is saying. And if it's gishamel muatin, so when it doesn't rain a lot, if it rains only a little bit, so then it's not just less rain, but it's also exponentially less benefit from that rain. L'mahu doma, what is that similar to? It's like a servant who receives his pay bit by bit, and you can't grind all his grain at once. Nimtzu rechayim, so you find that the mill, masha tochnos min hakor, tochnos min hakav. That which it would normally grind and catch from a core, it's now catching from a kav, a smaller measurement. You're still losing the same amount of flour in the cracks in the mill, and from the wind, etc. Nimtzeis, and similarly with the mixing bowl, isa, a dough, kamash nechelas min hakor, ochelas min hakav, the same amount that would be consumed, that would be lost when you're mixing a core, you're now going to lose from a smaller measurement of a kav. And the same with the rain, the less exponentially less production that you'll get from that rain. Davar acher, another idea, another way to explain it, bizman shegishamel merubin lemau domeh. What is it analogous to a year that has a lot of rain? La'adam shemegabel es hatit. It's like a person who's mixing cement. Im yesh lo mayim rabim. If he has a lot of water, mayim ein kalin ve'atit megubal yafet. A, he doesn't run out of water, and B, his cement, his clay will be well mixed. But im yesh lo mayim latim, if he only has a little bit of water, mayim kalim, first of all, he runs out of water. Ve'atit ein lo miskabel yafet. And secondly, his cement isn't going to be properly mixed. So the same thing is with rain. That if you have enough rain, so you have what you need, and you even have some water left over. But if you don't have enough rain, so you don't have water left over, I guess for drinking, and your ground won't even be soaked, and you won't get the benefits you'll get very little benefit from that rain. Just won't accomplish what it's supposed to accomplish. It's like if you're mixing cement but you don't have enough water, you end up with nothing. So similarly, if you only have a little bit of rain, it could be that you could end up really with not much production from that crop. Okay.